We didn't get our technology training, so, oh, there it is, indeed. Have faith and the images will come. I have the really incredible privilege of following Peter here, and to set the stage a little bit for our conversation this afternoon in my remarks, I have to say that one of the great gifts of coming frequently to Singapore is that I often see Peter here, and it seems to me, if anything, his observations, his words, his writing, and his conversations get better and better with time. So Peter, it's a privilege to be here. As we set about to prepare for this afternoon, we all looked briefly at the brief, which says that in discussing the subject of intense cities, we are going to consider, or should consider, program and mix of uses, high-rise, compact, sustainable forms of development, building communities, and infrastructure and investment. In other words, the whole panoply of things that come together to make truly successful cities. And yet at the same time, the structure of the afternoon is that we should focus on different separable pieces, if you will, of what makes cities special. And we got the draw here in this room to discuss intensity, not density, but intensity. What is an intense city? So I gave some thought to it, thinking about cities that feel intense to me, that give me the impression, the sense of being in a place that is intense. And I came up with 6 characteristics that I would like to share briefly with you. And then I'm going to talk a little bit, as we were asked to do, about one project in my town, New York City. You've heard a lot about New York City during the course of this meeting, so I'm picking one and only one thing as an example of what makes a place within a city intense. My assertion will be that a whole city cannot be intense, that intensity can only exist in relationship to its opposite, and that there are characteristics that we know when we experience them that tell us we are in a place of intensity and a place that we will enjoy. The first of these characteristics for me is age. The layers of time, the experience, the contrast within the place itself. So, for example, Berlin is a wonderful example of a city of intense places. It's an old city with a very young population, so contrast can also bring out a sense of intensity. And here we see other examples of this. The brightness of the lights, excuse me for a minute, is really hitting on the screen. Can you all see the images well back there, or are they a bit washed out? They're pretty washed out, I think. So I'm going to keep going, but maybe in the course of these presentations, we might lower these lights just for a moment so we can see it. So on the left-hand side in this slide, you see what city? New York. When? At the very beginning of the 20th century. So the age, the density of population, the number of interactions on the Lower East Side really were an indicator of incredible, vibrant economic opportunity. And that's exactly what you see in Shanghai at the beginning of the 21st century. People out in the street being very visible, being in a place of age and one that acquires patina. So here's another example, Havana. The framework of the old city, the cars of mid-century, and the excitement of a new young population coming into existence. So age and patina have, for me, something to do with intensity. The next is art and culture. Most of the places that we think of as intense express a culture, and sometimes it is art. There are values being expressed there, maybe some more about fun, some more about seriousness, some about art as a doorway to understanding the cultures that we're in. So we have the expressions of political culture that can create a sense of intensity. We have monuments and works of architecture that make for intense places, for an intense experience of being there. In wonderful cities like Barcelona, we actually have the art of building that tells you someone invested greatly in a place and is using architecture and the city to express qualities of life. And of course, we also have in our culture the constant presence of entertainment, whether it's in a subway car or in all aspects of our lives. And so it does seem to me that the combination of art and culture at all of its high to low manifestations is a part of intensity. So is using your senses. You cannot just watch an intense place. So we have the wonderful Millennium Fountain in Chicago, where there is the sound of water, the spray in the air, the giggle of voices, the rush of activity when the water spouts out of the mouth in the artwork. And it seems to me that needing to bring your senses to bear, not just your rational view of life, is one of the ways that you know you're in an intense place, in an intense city. But it's more than that, too. It somehow is the combination of individual initiative, building a business, getting a job, doing your job well, working at a level of commitment, and then sharing that in a greater sense of responsibility that is important to the intense places of our lives. So here we have the new phenomenon, everyone in his own shell of his own iPhone, iPad, smartphone, waiting for the train, but already at work in the morning, because we know that we need jobs to drive our lives. At the same time, there is the experience of going together, in this instance, a group of students going through the Kidron Valley, a very contested area in Israel, where only if people hold together will they solve the problems of both water and sensibility. So there's a seriousness of intense cities that brings out a commitment to each other that we are going to make life better. And clearly, one that Peter and I had the chance to experience this year, Khayelitsha, just out of Cape Town. I see Michael Krause here. It was a wonderful presentation yesterday, Michael, about it. In a place lacking completely of the public realm, people like those you see on the right came out of the homes they're living in an informal settlement, and together built, populate, use, and make safe the community centers that pull their community together. This is indeed a place of intensity, and a very special one indeed. Intense places have their temporality. Just as they have to have the opposite, non-intensity, to exist, their intensity changes across time, across a day, across the seasons, across the calendar, across the years. Examples of this, of course, the night. How fantastic it is, how you feel that you're in a place of importance and intensity when the night comes on and the lights come up and the darkness is the balance to all those lights. Or when you are out in the clubs. There are so many places in our city where the clubs themselves are an indicator of one of the places of intensity, sometimes a little too much. We are assaulted with the brands and the trends of our life. I never wanted to be Forever 21, but apparently a lot of people do here in Tokyo. And there is an intensity about this getting out, being there, and reacting to everything, the too much consumerism that the world is offering us now. And yet there's also the temporality of tradition. Succoth in the fall, markets as the harvest comes in across many cultures. These two, I believe, are one of the sources of intensity that gives a sense of interaction and reality to our lives, all of which add together to this sense of buzz. When you're in an intense place, you know you're there. You can feel it. I will leave it to others on the panel to decide whether it can be measured, but I'll stick with my definition, which is you know it when you feel the intensity, you know you're in an intense place. Just quickly touching on New York, and one example of a relatively high energy city, but where there are places that are insertions that, because of time, temporality, and all the things we bring together, actually become very intense. And what I want to talk about is the High Line. This is a picture from about 1935, when the Manhattan Bridge was just going into place, and I bring it out because it evokes a time where the High Line actually began, when there was tremendous pier activity along all the piers of the Hudson River on the west side of New York. You see them stretching out in the picture there. And this was a time when New Yorkers had a dream that intensity had to do with operating at many levels on all different kinds of transportation, multiple ways of getting together and interacting, as you see in this wonderful lithograph from 1911. Here's what it is now. 2 miles of an old industrial railroad. When all the piers existed on the Hudson River, the activity of people walking on the streets was in conflict with the delivery of goods by horse-drawn carts, and therefore the industry owners in the neighborhood came together and they built a railroad up in the air 22 feet above called the High Line, which moved from the pier areas to the various lofts and factories that existed on the Upper West Side. Well, needless to say, it fell into disrepair over the years and has come back to life in a project you have all heard about, a 1.5-mile walk, 22 feet in the air, usually only about 22 feet wide, in which people can be mobile, as you see they are here, or in which they can sit and watch each other, the people they're with, or the city all around them. And it becomes this weaving line that ties together not a dense place. In fact, this is the site where the new Whitney Museum is going to go, not a high-rise office building, and yet it is a place that so defines itself as a place to be that it has brought magic to this part of the city. An old element made new, given a temporality of night and day, a shared responsibility to make it happen. A few people came together and said, we want to stand against the mayor. We don't want to see the High Line demolished. We want to make it our place. And so for me, this is a great example of an intense place in a generally intense city, and something that really is a hallmark of why we enjoy coming together and being, as we often are in cities, the place where we reveal our best selves. So thank you very much for the opportunity to come.